Do you have ADHD? Do I have ADHD? It's a question that I've been asking ambiently for quite a few years now and obsessively for the last few months. And as of a week and a half ago, I sat down with an actual psychiatrist. I know the degrees and everything, and got officially diagnosed with ADHD. Along with that, we have a set of prescriptions, some medication, and some habits that we're working on building moving forward to help adjust, correct, and reframe and relearn a lot of aspects of life. And I'll tell you this, it's been transformative, it's been life-changing, it's been probably one of the most significant developments in, my history. And at the age of 31, it's about darn time. But that doesn't stop the rolling questions, the information that's all across the internet. Sometimes makes it hard for you to narrow down whether or not you should go get checked out by a psychiatrist as well. In this video, I'm going to be going through the 18 different diagnostic traits that people look for when determining if they have ADHD, that I looked at as an adult to see if this is something that I related to and saw reflected in my life and in my history all the way down to childhood. And it's a way to help frame out what you might actually be struggling with, because if you're one of the 5% of people in this world who have an ADHD brain, some of the solutions and some of the habits and some of the motivational forces that exist in the rest of the world that work for 95% of humans or 90% of humans that exist on this planet just won't work for you. So, getting diagnosed, getting help, getting treatment are a very important part of you moving forward, of you functioning, of you being a successful, whole, complete, and healthy human being, parent, spouse, father, and friend. That being said, this video is not a video to tell you whether or not you have ADHD. I'm going to go through the signs and traits, the 18 diagnostic signs, and tell you what they are and where I saw them reflected in my life. But this does not replace getting accurate medical help and treatment. If you find that you relate to these signs as I describe them and as I talk about them, and you find that they impact your life in at least 2 different locations, in a significant and noticeable way that is uncommon for someone in your age group or maturity level, then you should probably go get checked out. And you should book it while watching this video, because if you do have ADHD like me, the likely chances are you'll push it off, procrastinate, avoid, and it'll be years and years before you actually go sit down in front of a professional to get a true, accurate, and healthy treatment plan. And if you find that you're reflected in some of these traits, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have ADHD. In fact, a lot of these traits are evident in other mental health disorders and common life, as you'll see. So be careful about self-diagnosis. Be careful about attributing yourself a label which you don't actually and accurately have. The label itself can be powerful, life-changing, transformative, but if you give it to yourself without truly understanding what it is, you might actually do more harm than good. So be mindful, and let's start breaking down what we look for when we're determining if I have ADHD. So, there are 18 diagnostic traits. There's 9 that fall into 2 different categories. There is the inattentive. Sorry, I have braces in, which makes it a little bit hard to enunciate the things I'd like to enunciate, and every now and then I bite my tongue like I just did. You have 9 traits that fit into the inattentive disorder, or the part of the disorder that's inattentive. You have 9 traits that fit into the hyperactive disorder. Now, there is more research going on adult onset ADHD, and there's diagnoses, which don't quite fit the ADHD spectrum, but do relate to some type of ADHD level impairment in a minority of these areas. And there's habits that you can develop to address and work on some of those executive functioning problems that you have that don't quite meet the diagnostic standards as they're written at the moment. Now, in order to be officially diagnosed, you need to have 5 as an adult, 6 as a kid, of these 9 traits in 1 of the two categories, or that same number, 5 for adults, 6 for kids, in both categories. There's 3 different types of ways that ADHD represents and reflects itself. You have inattentive ADHD, you have hyperactive ADHD, and you have combined ADHD, which, as far as I'm aware, because I see myself in so many of these, I have that one. I'm just, overachiever at so much of the underachieving. So let's break this down. Let's start looking through this. Like I said, I'm going to work through these. I'm going to go quickly through them and tell you where I saw them evident in my life, so you have something to maybe frame off of, or either agree with and understand, or not agree with at all. So, the inattentive side of ADHD. Failure to give attention to details and or makes careless mistakes. Trouble holding attention on tasks or play. Does not seem to listen when spoken to. Often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish. Often has trouble organizing tasks and activities. Often avoids dislikes or is reluctant to do tasks that require mental effort over a long time. Often loses things necessary for said tasks. Is often easily distracted. Is often forgetful of daily activities. Now, some of the things that are important when it comes to the language and the breakdown of how these traits work is that keyword often at the front of it. What that keyword means, what often means, is that it's significant, it's noticeable, it's above those that are in the general population around you, and it happens in many different areas of your life. If you find that you're always forgetting to take out the trash when you're home, but you're pretty much functional in every other way when it comes to your memory and your working executive function tasks, you probably don't have ADHD. But if you find that you forget everything everywhere, you forget what you were going to be doing or picking up and carrying to work. You forget why you brought it there. You forget what you needed to do at home to get prepared for work. You forget what you were, bringing your gym bag to the gym. There's multiple areas of your life, from school to work to home to relationships to travel, where you find these elements impair your ability to function and maintain working life like those around you, like your peers. Then that's a positive sign of ADHD. So where do I see these evident in my life? Failure to give attention to details and or makes careless mistakes. Well, some of the areas that I find this extremely evident is in this job that I have. I run a secondary channel called Quackalope, where we play board games for a living. And the amount of ambient, random, and careless game rule errors we have, the amount of flubs and editing mistakes we've had throughout the past, the amount of little things that should be maybe fine-tuned and could be fine-tuned, and for others in a similar category to me, other gamers in my community, the amount of things I have historically missed have been significantly over those around me. Along with that, my wife gets perpetually frustrated with me when I do things like try to make the bed or fold laundry or organize stuff around the house. I find that I'm really, really good at moving big piles of things around, and it will look more straight and more organized. But if I'm not fixated on solving the problem, I only really shuffle things effectively and efficiently. I don't actually get down to the brass tacks of how you fold a shirt correctly, so it fits nicely into the drawer, or how you make the bed so that it's not wrinkled underneath or slightly oblong on the edges. Now, these sound like minor examples, and they certainly might be. Other people might be impaired much more than me in any one of these areas. But for me, this is where I see it evident. Trouble holding attention on tasks or play. I find that I almost always seek out some other type of external stimulation. I will listen to music while I do just about anything. Different levels of music with different, paces, and whether or not there's singing involved changes based on the task. But if I'm playing board games with friends, if I'm reading a book, if I'm working on a video, I'll always have something else dancing and shuffling around in my brain. One of the most incredible things about being on ADHD medication, being on Adderall specifically, was the ability to put my headphones down and enjoy washing the dishes. Again, it sounds like a minor thing, but for me it was completely opposite of anything I'd ever done in the past. I can focus on a task. It's one of the miscommunications or misconceptions about ADHD overall, is that it's an inability to focus. No, you can absolutely focus, but you focus on too many things and you're not very good at redirecting and orienting where your attention goes. And so you find that you're focused on this one important task, and then another, and then one over here, and then one up there, and then someone calls, and it takes you a lot longer to get things done, and you might not even make it back to the thing that you were supposed to be doing in the first place. So, I certainly have trouble holding attention. Does not seem to listen when spoken to. Now, this might be evident in a variety of ways. It could be because you're forgetful and don't remember to do things like putting out the dry cleaning when they need to pick it up in the morning, or making sure the boxes are ready to go out to the trash, two areas that I have historically and repeatedly failed to accomplish, despite my wife's best efforts at reminding me and asking me multiple times. Or it could seem like you're not focused on the conversation, gazing off to the side, drifting, fidgeting, twisting your beard, or doing any other number of things that seem to keep you from engaging directly with the person across from you. It doesn't mean that you're not paying attention. It's an important thing here. It says do not seem to listen when spoken to. You might be listening, but the way that other people listen might be very different from the way that the ADHD brain listens. Sometimes doodling, drawing, staring out a window is the best way for us to focus on what's happening in front of us, even though it doesn't seem like we're engaged with what's in front of us. Often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish. Well, that's because instructions are really hard. You can't remember all the sequences of things, and your brain interrupts each chapter, so you have rules 1 through 5, but there are 72 other things that you think of in between all of that, and so instructions ordered from 1 through 7 really don't work. I'll throw away a manual about as quickly as I get it. I will suffer my way through manuals until I'm pretty sure I know how the thing's supposed to be put together, and then I'll just go it alone. Now, along with that, when it came to schoolwork and other tasks, I almost couldn't follow the structure that school and life and homework demanded. If you were supposed to do a project one way, I guarantee I would think of a different way to approach it and accomplish it, or not accomplish it, or delay it until I panicked moments before going to school, and then try my best to scrap something together. I really struggled with things like perfect citations, mathematical equations, showing your work when you were, producing it. Again, this might not be my most extensive area of focus or example, and yet I'm still figuring out how all these things apply to me. So that's where I see it at the moment. Often has trouble organizing tasks and activities. Well, that's clear. I mean, I have piles and piles of notebooks where I have so many lists, ideas, and structures, and I basically restart that every couple of days, trying to frame out what I want to do, what I need to do, how to get it organized, how to get it structured, and it's brilliant the moment I'm doing it. And then immediately afterwards, I have no idea how to proceed, so I do whatever's the most interesting, the most fun, the most applicable, or the easiest to get accomplished, while potentially eating a bunch of sugar, drinking a little bit of liquor, and always looking for a friend to be near me so that I can be motivated to start, continue, and finish. So I'm not very good at organizing tasks or activities. In fact, if I need to organize something, I'll usually start at the beginning and then jump around to seven or other things throughout the process of doing the task until eventually I wind my way back to the thing that I was doing, like making a nice cup of tea, and hopefully successfully complete it. Often avoids dislikes or is reluctant to do tasks that require mental effort over a long time. Writing a research paper, sitting down to read a board game rulebook, which is my career. It's not a bad career, and yet I struggle so deeply to do some of the things that I enjoy doing. I can be the most excited about a game, and yet still I want someone else to read that rulebook because my brain doesn't focus or engage enough when I'm just sitting and reading. If I'm not completely focused on a single thing, and sometimes I'm obsessively focused on a single thing to the degree that it lessens my ability to do anything else. But if I'm not completely focused on a single thing, I avoid those longer projects like the plague. I'll avoid long edits on the computer. I'll avoid timestamping every single time. I have the desperate inability to file my taxes, to call my dad. I don't know that that's a long extended task, but it does take long extended effort and some degree of emotional exposure. I have had a really hard time at this category, certainly over my life, where I look at where I've procrastinated the worst, sought other stimulants like caffeine, sugar, and alcohol to keep myself motivated and engaged. It's largely been around projects like this. I put off my college final project, the big showcase piece you're supposed to do to graduate. I put that off for so long that I ended up producing a project on procrastination because I was trying to solve the problem as to why I procrastinated that said project for so much time. It wasn't very impressive, but the idea I came up with, I think, was really good. We'll talk about that more later. Often loses things necessary for tasks. I think I lose everything I come in contact with, but I also don't admit to losing anything. I just have gotten really comfortable with the fact that I don't actually know where things are. I assume I set them down in one of a number of places where I typically set things down, and when I want to find them, I go look for them. And when I do find them, I celebrate, and if I don't find them, then I assume they're still floating around. I don't know where my wallet is at the moment. I think my headphones are in my pocket because that's where they live. And I couldn't tell you exactly where all my memory cards, batteries, Nintendo Switch, or projects I need to work on today happen to be. I can tell you approximately where I think they are, but not specifically. So I don't lose anything. But I'm very comfortable, and I've become very comfortable just not knowing where things are. My wife would disagree with this. She would insist that I lose almost, if not nearly, every important thing to general functioning possible. I deny that. Is often easily distracted. 1,000 times a day. I always consciously have about 3 thoughts running through my brain at all times, and those thoughts can sometimes be oriented at the thing I'm doing, like how much am I moving my hands when I talk to you, how quickly am I moving through this video, because if you have ADHD and you're trying to stay engaged and watch it, at this point you might have already disengaged, and of course, what am I going to be saying next? Those are 3 pathways that have been operating for the duration of this video so far. And when I'm not engaged in a conversation or activity that I find overwhelmingly stimulating or satisfactorily stimulating, my brain, those 3 pathways, one of them might, if I'm lucky, stay fixed on that central point, while the other 2 kind of squirm off this way. It's where I come up with some of my best ideas. It's actually a great way to generate and be creative. ADHD leads to higher levels of entrepreneurship, higher levels of creativity. It is a powerhouse when it comes to generating ideas because that abstract, divergent thinking is powerful. And yet, when not directed or not oriented at the thing it needs to be focused on, it can also lead to, being easily distracted. Is often forgetful of daily activities. I mentioned trash, I mentioned dry cleaners, but let's talk about dishes, cups sitting around, editing video projects, time stamping, responding to emails, getting back to phone calls or texts when people reach out to you. As you can see, one level of my brain is trying to obsessively make sure that my white shirt isn't poking out there because I don't like how it looks and I can see myself in this tiny little screen every now and then, but I need to just be okay with the fact that I can't control it at this point, and yet I was talking about all those daily activities that I fail to accomplish. I got married about 7 months ago, and that's where this thing, this beast, took on its, degree of obstructiveness. Being a married man and trying to be the best husband that I could be, I did my best to manage the tasks around the house while my wife was working full-time at the NICU. So doing things like making her lunches, writing her notes, which I love doing because it makes her so happy and helps our relationship, cleaning the dishes, picking up the house, folding the blankets, feeding the dog. I don't know how many times I've checked and the dog's water bowl was empty, but more than you should when you love, adore, and get so much joy from your tiny little pet. I'm just saying, the only reason the plants are alive is because they're sitting in front of me at the windowsill while I wash dishes and I splash a little bit of water up there at the same time. So, am I forgetful of daily activities? Possibly. Let's move on to the second category of 9 traits. Remember, you'll need to have 5 of these significantly affecting your life in multiple areas of life in order to be potentially diagnosed with ADHD. In the hyperactive category, we're going to see more things that relate to some of the stereotypes associated with ADHD overall, right? The under-medicated kid or the over-medicated kid that just can't sit still, but when he's not on medication, he's squirming and tapping and moving around and looking up and standing up in the middle of things where he really shouldn't be. Well, that's not always the case, especially when it comes to adults, because we've developed coping mechanisms that allow us to not disturb others so much, because it's socially inappropriate to do so and has severe consequences that we've probably experienced many times in our lives. That doesn't mean we're calm. Restlessness can be an internal substructure. It could be biting your nails or twisting your beard, which is something that I do almost, if not technically, obsessively. It could be tapping your leg or just shifting back and forth. So as we go through these, remember, the stereotypes that exist out there around ADHD, while they do come from some degree of basis and some degree of source, oftentimes don't actually reflect how each individual person represents or experiences their own ADHD brain. Often fidgets with or taps hands or feet or squirms in seat. Often leaves seat when remaining seated is expected. Often runs around or climbs. Adults might just feel restless. Often unable to take part in leisure activities quietly. Often on the go as if driven by a motor. Often talks excessively. Often blurts out an answer before a question is completed. Often trouble waiting turns. Often interrupts others. So, here again we see often repeated multiple times, and it's hard to judge your own degree of impact, which is why it's important to go in and see a professional before assigning yourself a diagnosis. Let's go through these and talk about how they relate to me, and then we'll end and wrap up this video. Hopefully it's been beneficial to some of you. If it has, please hit that subscribe button down below. It really does do wonders for a small startup channel like this, and I'll be addressing more and more ADHD issues and conversation points as I figure out exactly how I function, and hopefully can help you figure out how you function. Often fidgets with or taps hands or feet or squirms in seat. So this is evident in my life exactly how it says. I twist my beard and fidget with my beard. I learned how to do this in middle school because I saw another kid doing it. I thought it was fascinating, just the rolling fingers, taps. I bite my nails obsessively, except the braces make it hard now. When I had long hair, I'd twist the ends of it as well. I'll squirm, shift, move, put my legs under me, bring my legs out from under me, and overall just not sit very still. On top of that, if other people who have anxiety or just a general fidget about them are sitting there tapping their leg, you know, the kick that sometimes happen that your friends or you might experience, that will feed anxiety into me. So my restlessness is so palpable that other people's restlessness make mine rise to the surface, which is an interesting way to experience your own internal rhythm. Often leave seat when remaining seated is expected. I didn't at first think I related to this one, and it does say that some of these may be reflected in a general restlessness more in adults than in children. In children, you might be popping up from your seat in school and moving around and going to look at the window. And I think there was some degree of evidence for that in me when I was younger, but I don't as accurately remember this. However, nowadays as an adult, there's certainly areas of life where I see that I don't and can't sit still the same way other people do. When I edit, for instance, I'll shift up and down. I wish I had a standing desk because I would use it all the time. I'll sometimes actually sit on my knees while playing a board game and walk back and forth while friends are able to sit there perfectly comfortable. I know on many occasions while filming videos or sitting there playing games with friends, will shift like this. This gives me the ability to engage and be in a different orientation, and other people aren't doing this. I've never in my life met someone who moves to sit on their knees in the middle of a very fun, exciting board game. On top of that, when I go to shul, which is kind of like church for Orthodox Jews, I can't stay as seated as the other people in the congregation. I mean, I don't let it affect other people, at least I certainly hope I don't, but I'll stand, I'll sit, I'll maybe walk to the library and look around a little bit if I'm waiting for the person leading to catch up. I will sit in the back of the room in some areas so that I don't have to be cramped and in a location where I feel a little bit more stuck and a little bit more trapped, where other people seem perfectly comfortable being in those tight aisles and rows. So that's certainly an area where I see this stand out. Let's talk about often runs about or climbs. Now, I do run about and climb. I don't know that that's related to ADHD, though. It's just fun to run about and climb. Jungle gyms are fantastic, rock walls are exciting, and it's good to skip, I think. Maybe it is, who knows. But the ambient adult feeling of restlessness, I certainly do have. Like an internal hum that you always have running in your heart, lungs, and brain. Yeah, that underlying palpable vibration certainly exists within me. Often unable to take part in leisure activities quietly. When I used to learn board games with one of my best friends back in the day, we would sit there and, well, do this. We would do that for hours and hours, barely saying any cognitive things back to each other, just playing the game, replaying the game, learning the rules, and humming and pinging off of each other's song, personalities, music, sounds, whatever you want to call it. But there's many, many locations where I'm unable to be the quiet person sitting in the corner reading. Now, remember, because of inattentive expressive areas of ADHD, this, which is the stereotypical ADHD element, isn't evident in everyone that has ADHD. In fact, gazing quietly and staring out a window or being so obsessed with a book you can't put it down are just as accurate signs as being loud, obnoxious, interrupting, and humming to yourself constantly while the rest of the kids are sitting quietly in class. Often on the go as if driven by a motor. I might have missed this one when I read through the original chart. I thought I skipped one, but I didn't want to double back and check. I always have felt like this. It's one of the reasons why I've started so many different businesses, worked so hard for the past 15 years of my life, and am always on the run. I also feel extremely down, sad, depressed, anxious when I'm not being productive and accomplishing something, which with ADHD happens to be way more than I would like and might be more than is normal for human society. I feel like I have very little time. When I listened to Hamilton and became obsessed with that play for a season of my life, why do you write like he's running out of time? Write every night like he's running out of time. That felt so relatable. I wanted to be that person. I felt like I should be that person. The obsessive sitting and working as hard as possible, as diligently as possible, as if time itself was something you never would have enough of, and the limited amount you had, which was only now and only today, was going to run out a second later. I didn't know how to sit still, to be at peace, to meditate, or be calm. I've only really known how to go. And I've been good at going, but that's apparently not normal. Often talks excessively. Need I point to the length of this video and the duration of people still watching it at this point to indicate that I have this? often blurts out an answer before a question is completed. 5 years of a career on YouTube, and the amount of comments I have had saying that I jump in, interrupt, and don't let people speak is noticeable, significant, and has been brought up before when talking about having guests on the channel. Now, I don't think I've ever knowledgeably made a guest feel like I wasn't engaged with them. But I do warn people, typically before I film with them, that I'm a steam engine, and I need them to be one as well so that I can back off and give them space. I'll jump in, hop, and be excited, and my brain's going 1,000 miles a second, so I know what they're going to say. They've kind of already said it in my mind, so let's go say the next thing. Let's bring the audience in. Let's engage. I like the random chaos of it, but not everyone does, and not everyone can follow along. And like I said, it became a thing that I would tell people before they filmed. I say, listen, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to have fun, I'm going to be playing around. If you want to say something and I interrupt you, punch back, kick me, make a joke, or just speak a little bit louder, and I'll know to give you some room. And let's be honest, even the room that I gave them probably didn't last as long as it could have or should have. Often trouble waiting turns. I see people that go to amusement parks, and I do not understand how they didn't spend $200 extra on a fast pass. I would refuse to go to an amusement park if I had to wait in any of those lines. I mean, a 50-minute line standing there, maybe I could do one, but even that would be suffering, and I'd want to book a podcast or a game to play while I did it. A day full of waiting in lines to ride a 3-second roller coaster, yeah, the roller coaster is great, but it is not worth that. The degree of suffering I experience in lines is par for none. I don't like waiting in lines anywhere. I get onto a call center or have to go through 2 or 3 different levels of communication to get to customer service. I hate it. I look for the shortest line in the grocery store, which everyone does, but I'll go out of my way to try to, seek it out. I get frustrated and grumpy if the gas station's full, and it's hard for me to be patient when standing for something that I want. Now, there have been some cases where I've been good at waiting in lines, and that's typically been when I was doing something crazy or extreme alongside of it, like staying up all night waiting for my very favorite board game ever. There's a constant rush of dopamine, and it's always stimulating, so why not do it? And it's going to be a really cool story to tell. Often interrupts or intrudes on others. We talked about this when it comes to often blurts out the answer before a question is completed, but it's a very similar related thing. Part of the reason why I jump in, interrupt, or finish someone else's sentences is because my brain already thinks it knows what they're going to say and knows the answer ahead of time. So I pop in as quickly and efficiently as possible. So there you have it. There's 18 different traits when you're looking to diagnose ADHD, 9 in inattentive, 9 in hyperactive, and you need to, if you're an adult watching this video, have a significant and impactful evidence for 5 of either category or 5 of both in order to be potentially diagnosed with ADHD. Once again, for I think the 3rd or 4th time in this video, I will repeat, if you feel like you relate to or sympathize with any of these symptoms, and you feel like your life is being negatively impacted, go seek professional help. Find a psychiatrist that specializes in ADHD treatment and diagnosis. It might not be ADHD that's causing you your problems. It could be depression, anxiety, or some other mental health conditions that exist out there. They will know better than you or I ever could. And if you think you have ADHD, go ahead and book that appointment now, because the reality is, if you close this video, you'll start scrolling on YouTube, you'll get distracted by another search term, and you'll avoid doing the one thing that could actually move you forward in a helpful, constructive manner, which is getting an appointment with someone that knows a whole lot more than us. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here, and I'll see you soon.